Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's webinar, People-Based Marketing for Your B2B Account-Based Marketing Strategy, brought to you by FullContact and Hatchbuck.
Thanks, Allie. As Allie mentioned, we're excited to talk to you about ABM. My name is Jonathan Herrick, co-founder and chief sales and marketing officer here at Hatchbuck. Hatchbuck is a CRM and marketing automation platform that helps you build better relationships with your prospects and customers and grow sales. You can always learn more about our platform and services at hatchbuck.com. I am really excited today to be joined by Mike Brouwer, VP of Sales at FullContact, and I will throw it over to him to give you a little bit of background on Mike, and then we'll get this thing started.
Hey, and thank you, Jonathan, and I'm super excited to partner with you today. My name is Mike Brouwer. I'm the Vice President of Sales at FullContact. I've been with the company for about 3.5 years now, and one of the many areas that attracted me to join FullContact is that I've been running sales organizations for about the last 20 years, and the ability to understand who your ideal customer is, to be able to truly leverage data in order to be effective in engagement and outreach, and both from an account-based marketing perspective and business development perspective, certainly solving that problem in FullContact, being a leader in solving that problem is why I've been so excited to be here. So thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get started. Before I do, there's one last thing I would love our audience to know before we get this webinar underway. Mike just happens to be a Chicago Cubs fan, and I happen to grow up a longtime Cardinals fan. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. How can a Cubs fan and a Cardinals fan possibly co-host a webinar together? Well, that's pretty simple. We are both really passionate, as Mike said, about tapping into the power of technology to deliver personal conversations with prospects and customers for our clients. In fact, at Hatchbuck, we leverage FullContact's powerful data set within our platform to give our customers greater insights on their contact data. So that being said, love to get today's webinar started. Today's webinar is People-Based Marketing for Your B2B Account-Based Marketing Strategy. So let's first unpack what account-based marketing is and why it matters. So for years, inbound marketing really has been the go-to marketing strategy for businesses who are looking to drive results. The playbook was simple: create content, cast a wide net, and you hope that a ton of traffic loads up in your sales funnel. And the reality is, the more traffic you could drive, the better chances you had of finding those paying customers at the bottom of the funnel, even if that meant sorting through a bunch of unqualified leads along the way. But today, in this new digital era, buyers are just inundated with information online, and successful marketers are winning with a new playbook. It's called account-based marketing, or ABM for short. Account-based marketing really shifts the focus away from that wide area net approach to a more targeted, customized approach. It really allows you to trade in that big wide net for more of a harpoon, something sharp and going after specific accounts. In a nutshell, ABM really streamlines your sales and marketing teams. It helps them focus most of their attention on highly targeted prospective customers. So for example, let's look at an example of this. Instead of blasting a free white paper out to thousands of leads, hoping that maybe a handful or even 10 of them end up in the process and engage with your content, you're really looking to give your white paper and your content to specific decision makers at key accounts, so you can drive those conversion rates. But just like being a Cubs fan until the year 2016, rolling out an ABM strategy is really not without its challenges. Sorry, Mike, I couldn't help but throw that one in there for you.
That's painful.
That's all right. It's the Cubs Cards love we have, rivalry across border here. But before you really look at that, you need to look at the challenges that a lot of companies have had getting ABM to work within their marketing strategy. The first thing you need to have is you really need to have great data and insights about your ideal customer and be able to build an accurate targeted list. The second thing that I think marketers struggle with is they fail to align their content strategy to their account-based marketing initiatives. Remember, when ABM works best is when you can communicate on a personal level with that unique needs of that particular account. So instead of having a one-size-fits-all message, really drilling down into the needs of that one individual. Lastly, I would say the biggest problem I see, I know, Mike, you echo this as well, that marketers struggle with is the inability to scale their ABM process. So as your account list grows, do you really have the process and the tools to still deliver that one-to-one personal conversation at scale? So Mike, I'm going to flip it over to you and let you kind of unpack and dig into these challenges a bit more, and share some ideas with our audience.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and anything we can do to get that painful picture off the screen and move on to the next one is good with me. And I've already prepared my children for a lifetime of suffering as Cubs fans, so we're good to go.
The good thing is with when you pass 2016, you guys won a World Series and you guys are leading the division, so there's not much to hide from. You guys are doing great.
Well, we'll just see if that continues over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Thank you, Jonathan, and boy, you really framed the problem and the challenge for go-to-market machines and marketing and sales very well. And just to take a step back for a moment, if you think about where your contact data is, your professional world, the relationships you have, it's scattered across a variety of different mediums. It's scattered across your social networks, certainly the variety of email addresses and address books you have, and so on. And then when we look at the problem, not just from an individual, but for a business overall, in the next slide, that problem gets exacerbated and compounded across the enterprise. So with the explosion of SaaS systems that companies use, contact data across all those systems, all of your employees' contact data and relationship, it really becomes a major problem to manage. And if I take just a historical view of it and talk about how this problem has grown tremendously, prior to the mid-1990s or so, the contact information that you would manage as a business mainly included company data, job title data, phone numbers, and mailing addresses, physical mailing addresses. And also a problem that I don't think is talked about enough, but it just compounds all of this, is back in 1990, about 60% of employed people, of professionals, were with their current company for at least 4 years' time. Today, that number is cut in half. It's only 30% of the professionals have been with their company for 4+ years. So we're constantly moving around. That data is constantly changing, and it's made things so much more complex. You still need to manage all that traditional data, but you also need to manage multiple email addresses. You need to manage people's digital presence and their social presence and their social handles as channels in order to be able to nurture and engage your prospects and customers. And that data is changing constantly. So moving on, when not only do you have all of this data you have to manage to know who your ideal customer is or prospect is and where and how to engage them, but you also have to cut through the noise. And in order to do that, you need to deliver the right message at the right time with the right personalized touch. And to be effective in your outreach, you need to manage the wealth of available additional data, psychographic data, behavioral data, transactional data, social media insights, etc. And finally, to cause everyone's shoulders to slump just a little bit further, that data is scattered across many, many systems, as I touched on. With the explosion of SaaS applications, this problem is more complex than ever and yet more important than ever to solve. So the bottom line is, to succeed in the age of the consumer, which is where we're at today and where we're going, companies need to create tailored, personal, and consistent omni-channel experiences. When moving on to the next slide, in order to start to do that, it first starts with identity resolution, and identity resolution provides the complete view of any person across your platforms and channels with both personal and professional dimensions for a true understanding of the person behind that data. The ability to answer the question of who across all platforms with deeper knowledge on a one-to-one level of your decision makers and influencers in your target account list or your target prospect list. At FullContact, and I'll touch on this a bit later, but from just a pure sales business development perspective, our best conversion ratios occur when we are engaging around direct mailing campaigns where we personalize inexpensive gifts, but they're to targeted companies and personas based on things like where they went to college, what their interests are on social media, whether that's sports teams, if you happen to be a Cardinals fan or something, or whether it's your musical taste or your professional passions. And we follow that up with very personalized emails and voicemails designed for the individuals that we want to engage with. On the next slide, I think this is really important to delineate the difference and understand between identity resolution and audience data insights. So identity resolution, I always like to compare it, and I was just in New York City recently, and it's amazing. You look at these unbelievable skyscrapers, and some of them are just so aesthetically beautiful, and it's amazing at the size and scope and so on. But identity resolution is that foundation. In order to build this very effective program, you need to have the solid foundation in place. And audience data insights, to me, is the beauty of the structure of skyscraper. It's truly the advantage. It's the intelligence that drives successful execution of the ABM in business development strategies. Now let's look at some of the key pieces of data that if you have the foundational identity resolution and the actionable audience data insight strategies in place. When I start with the foundation or identity resolution, it's all the pieces of data that are truly at the core of that 360-degree view of who a person is. It's all of the identifiers of who a person is, both with traditional PII as well as their digital identifiers. And Ellie, if you could just jump back to the previous slide. And some of you on this call are probably thinking, hey, I have a whole bunch of emails for most of my prospects, or I may have some phone numbers for some of them, or some postal addresses for a few. Or some of you may have a list of digital identifiers such as cookie IDs for your prospects. And currently you're leveraging any of these pieces of data to execute on siloed marketing or business development campaigns, creating high-level buckets of prospects with generic messaging to drive hand raisers or engagements. And Jonathan touched on that earlier. It's really fishing with a net in that regard. So the question is, how do you build the foundation if that's your current state? How do you build that foundational identity resolution layer to include as much of the traditional as well as the digital IDs as quickly as possible? That can seem to be a daunting task, whether you have to do one-to-one research of each individual or whether you have to go to multiple vendors to piece this together. The good news is there are partners out there like FullContact where you can submit an individual identifier or piece of data such as an email address, and because of leveraging the enormous identity graph, you can have the rest of that traditional and digital identifiers returned to you, all based on just a single email address as an example. And with that foundation in place, and it's critical that you have it, you can now build in intelligence or audio data insights. Think about the ability to take all of your top customers, the champions or buyers within those customers, and imagine if you could build a profile of who they are, what their demographic information, psychographic profile looks like, and ultimately understand what's important to them within your top customers and champions within those companies. What you're most likely to find if you have that data available is several different and unique profiles you can build on. Once you have that piece in place, you can use data to build lookalike audiences and personas based on the affinities of who your top customers really are. And this allows the marketing team to create a deeper lead scoring methodology as an example, allows the sales team to be able to focus on who they're going after and what leads that fit your ideal customer profile. And then it helps with the outbound effort from a business development standpoint as well. So in the next slide, ultimately, this is what you get, which is the 360-degree view. This is what it looks like. So now you can take your targeted list, you've taken your emails, and you've added in both identity resolution and the audio data insights. With this intelligence, you now have the ability to focus on an effective ABM strategy, and this is where a great platform like Hatchbuck will really tie it all together. So now, in the next slide, and before I turn this over to Jonathan to really dive deep into how to use that data most effectively, let's consider the application of identity resolution in audio data insights as it pertains to your customer journey. My assumption is most folks on this call have mapped out a customer journey that looks similar to this. So if you have, think about in particular driving the desired engagement during the interest and consideration phases of the customer journey. Just to use a personal example, I average receiving about 80 marketing or business development emails every week in my inbox. And so let's just say it's an even 300 every month. I will tell you with confidence that less than 10 of those emails a week, or 10 of those emails every month, or less than 3% of them are truly personalized to a level that gets my attention. The rest of them, frankly, I just wind up deleting, and so it's just not effective outreach, even if I am the right persona that they're trying to engage with. And then finally, in this last slide, and then I will turn it over to Jonathan. Now that you have all this knowledge in place and you have all this knowledge about your prospects and customers, how do you use it? Well, I'm going to just give you a couple of examples of how we leverage personalization here at FullContact. As I mentioned earlier, our number one conversion rate and engagement rate from a business development perspective is driven by our personalized direct mailing campaigns. Because we understand our ideal customer profile, so we know the who of where we want to target, we're able to understand their background, what they follow in their digital presence, where they worked previously and where they went to school, whether they're a quality individual who follows the Chicago Cubs or whether they're into golf or data science or whatever it is. We are creative in picking inexpensive but relevant gifts that we ship directly through Amazon in most cases, which makes it easy, that we then personalize the emails and voicemails that we conduct behind that direct mailing campaign. And in the end, we're able to engage and convert at a very high rate because the entire campaign is relevant to the individual we're reaching out to. Our marketing organization is fixated because of that one-to-one personalization in delivering more relevant ads through the right channels. So our conversion rates here are the best that I've ever seen in my 20-plus year career of working closely with my marketing partners. There's absolutely nothing worse, in my opinion, into sending the right person. You've identified who that is, and somebody who's in the right ideal customer or account that you would target, and you send them an irrelevant message. I mentioned that I receive about 80 emails per week as outreach, and it blows me away how many of those will say, based on doing some research, it appears you are the person in charge of the engineering organization, as an example, or you're in charge of the product roadmap or whatever it is. And at the end of that email, it always says, and if you're not the right person, would you mind making the introduction into the appropriate person? Well, I think you can all guess how often I take action and make that introduction in that scenario. Jonathan, my assumption is you get a very similar types of emails and take similar action when they're not personalized to you.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, they laugh at me here because most of the times my phone isn't plugged in, and they wonder how I can drive sales and marketing here at Hatchbuck without a phone. But I would say 99% of the voicemails I get here are completely not personalized, and they'll leave that same voicemail for multiple people in the company. And the email, So, when people look at account-based marketing, they think, hey, I can get 25,000 accounts, and that's narrowed down from the million that's in my space, and I can go ahead and dump them into a marketing automation tool, automate, and then engage. And while that's more targeted than, say, inbound marketing or completely casting a wide net, it's still not targeted enough, and it's still not personalized enough, because at the end of the day, consumers want a personalized experience, and the one-to-one experience is what's dominating right now conversion rates. And to your point, when you get one-to-one with a customer and you intimately know that customer's not going to leave, and they have a longer lifetime value. On the flip side, if you get to know those prospects in the same manner, and you're already targeting highly qualified prospects, it makes those conversion rates and also that sales cycle happen much more efficiently than if you didn't. So I 100% agree. So Mike just shared with all of us really the importance of personalization for your ABM strategy. Now let's talk about using your CRM to segment your data in a useful way. We often recommend to our customers to start organizing their contacts by simple items like status. For example, lead, prospect, or customer. It's a great way to start, right? I mean, you don't want to send a lead, a prospect, and a customer probably the same email. But I really wouldn't stop there. I would look at using your CRM to tag and segment your account list based on the actions of your target accounts and prospects. That's really key. That means that a key account fills out a form, for example, visits your site, or maybe even clicks on your emails. Your CRM should automatically put them into the right bucket. So you may be using a direct mail strategy to reach those one-to-one prospects, but you also could be leveraging email, right? I know, Mike, to your point, if you send somebody something personalized, you want to follow up with email and a phone call, right? It's the old direct mail email, call campaign. And so it's really tough, though, if you don't have your contact segmented correctly, and before you know it, you're sending the wrong message to the right person who actually is qualified. When you take a personalized approach to your marketing through segmentation, you'll boost your conversion rates. We've seen it here. We've seen clients drive sales quickly as 2 to 3 months by 25% or more, and a lot of it's through that personalization versus a one-size-fits-all type of message. And ultimately, you're going to drive more sales and nurture your audience way more effectively. Now that I shared a bit earlier that marketers aren't without their challenges with ABM, the number one challenge that I feel I see out there is that it's really hard for marketers to figure out how to get ABM to work at scale and still do it in a personalized way. I mean, for example, if you're working with 10 accounts and you know those 10 accounts intimately and you're driving success, the goal is to go find 10 more just like it. Well, it's just like them. And the reality is, as that account list grows, it makes it really, really tough to still communicate in that one-to-one fashion. And that's where intelligent automation comes in. By using campaign outreach, for example, through your CRM and marketing platform, you can really put your communication with all your targeted prospects on autopilot. So let's look at an example of this. So in this campaign, let's say I target 10 accounts, and I sent out a cold email to really introduce my company. Now, you definitely don't want to go the same email that Mike received and I received, because they don't work, right? You don't want to send an email saying, hey, I'm not sure if you're the right person, but if you are, let's talk. If you're not, send me to the business next door, right? That doesn't really work. Really what we want to do is send a personalized email and to just be open and say, hey, I'm just trying to introduce myself to your business, and know something about that business, whether they're, Fortune 500, there's something that is really important to that business or recent news, and make it personal, or see something on social, include it in that first intro email. But the truth is that as you start to nurture that prospect and engage with them, in day 7, 8, 15 or 21, obviously you're going to communicate with a different strategy. Maybe it's a resource or a helpful, helpful article you saw that was relevant to their position to help them. So I think the key is in a campaign is have a multi-step campaign, make it personal. Don't make it a one-size-fits-all campaign, and really watch that campaign to understand what's engaging with your prospects and what isn't. Take it a step further, you can really leverage automation within your campaigns to hyper-target your prospects with the right content. So, for example, let's just take the example that you're a B2B a company selling enterprise software. And let's say you start with 100 accounts. and that you're really targeting as part of your ABM strategy. You can put all those accounts on a campaign and then let your marketing automation platform segment them based on how they're behaving, with your online content. So how they're engaging with emails, how they're engaging with direct mail, how they're engaging with social. With these insights, you can really better manage each contact. And instead of like stage 3 or 4 of the buying process, sending the same content to everybody, you can really drive into a more personalized strategy and create a better conversation for your sales team. So, for example, leads can receive, one campaign, maybe hot prospects can receive another campaign that's more relevant. And the whole goal is to get them to have conversations with your team and converting your sales process. Overall, with automation, you can send your sales reps hot lead alerts, for example. So when an account is, let's say they're on your website and they're checking out your blog, you may just continue to send them relevant articles to exactly what they're clicking on or what they're searching for. Well, let's say they hit the pricing page. That's a great example. If you have a target account, let's say in your top 20 accounts, that happens to do your pricing page but doesn't fill out your call to action and maybe take a demo or to talk with a sales rep, it's a great time to kick out a notification to your sales team member and say, hey, Bob Smith from ABC Company has been on the website and looks like they're interested in pricing. You may want to give them a ring, and you can make that personal call. The other thing I've seen work too is, and what we do here is using tools like Vidyard or other personal video tools. And once that person's on your website, shoot them a personal video. Let them know that they're interested and you want to set up a time to have a quick chat and to follow up on their needs. So there's a number of ways to be personal, and I think the key is leveraging automation to do some of the heavy lifting so your team can spend most of its time one-on-one driving conversations and driving sales. Lastly, your CRM can really prove to be invaluable in helping your team to stay on top of all your ABM opportunities at scale. Remember, with ABM, you'll be targeting less accounts while still needing to be high touch with all of your contacts. And I think that's really the balancing act that's really tough for a lot of customers that we see, right? I want to scale and I want to grow and I want to reach more contacts, but I don't want to seem like this automated marketing engine that's completely impersonal. One key that we've seen is really making sure you leverage your task management activity-based automation within your CRM, really to keep in front of all those contacts and know exactly when to reach out so it's timely. And really it's going to ensure that you don't miss opportunities and those opportunities don't slip through the cracks in your pipeline. So to kind of wrap this up, by connecting the dots between all your contact data with FullContact, for example, segmenting your account list and automating your outreach with a tool like Hatchbuck, you'll be able to scale your ABM strategy in a much more personalized way and hopefully see a quick ROI from your ABM efforts. So I'm gonna stop here and turn it over to Allie. I know she's got a ton of questions. Looks like that's coming in. And Mike, are you okay to stick around for a little bit and answer some questions?
You bet. Absolutely.
So I'll turn it over to Allie, and we'll see what Mike and I can do to answer a few questions.
All right, we're going to get to as many of these as we can, and if we don't, we will definitely follow up via email with all of your questions. Okay, so the first question we got from Jessica, and it's for Jonathan, and it says, if you're just starting an ABM strategy, what is a good way to identify who your key accounts are?
That is a great question. At Hatchbuck, we have a number of SMB clients and large clients and enterprise, so all walks of life, and we get that question all the time, like, where do I start? So here's, I guess, what I would do. I would start by segmenting your customers by things such as NPS, lifetime value, revenue, things that are really important to you, churn rates, right? Obviously you don't want to bring on more customers that are more likely to churn, for example. So what we've done here is we've really looked at Net Promoter Score and said, okay, give us the customers that are more likely to promote our product or service, right? Look at the ones that have a great lifetime value, right? That upgrade, that that are engaged in the product, and then what we try to do is try to mine that data for those accounts, and then we look at geographic, demographic, and technographic data, like Mike mentioned earlier. And we kind of overlap all of that data to get a really good picture of our ideal buyer. And at Hatchbuck, what we call it is radical buyer, because I believe that there's an ideal buyer, but I believe there's a radical buyer. And we all know who that is because we've been that person at times when we refer a restaurant or refer a business. We're looking for that customer that we know is a perfect fit for our software platform, but more importantly, we know we can add value to that business and have a long relationship with them. In the end, you're really going to uncover your best customer through these steps and build that targeted list of accounts. And then after that, you're kind of off to the races with setting up your ABM strategy.
Cool. Mike, the next question is for you, and it's from Erin, and she asks, what kind of companies are doing identity resolution and seeing it work for them?
So I'm going to assume that the question is more geared towards who is leveraging it versus how many companies out there offer some type of identity resolution piece or identity resolution solution. For customers, and I'll just speak with our direct experience at FullContact, we have a couple thousand customers that range from smaller SMB type customers all the way up to some of the largest companies in the world that are leveraging identity resolution to be more effective in their account-based marketing strategy and their business development strategy. So there's not a particular size of company or type of company that is leveraging it. I think what we have seen a very strong pattern of is a couple of pieces. First of all, it's a company, and in particular a marketing organization that needs to commit to getting that foundational piece in place. It takes a commitment of effort and focus in order to do it. What we tend to find is, and you can even see this in some survey data, companies believe and understand that they need to be strong at identity resolution, but ultimately they're overwhelmed in where to start. And so the reason why they don't leverage it effectively is simply that they don't know where to begin in order to do so. And my very strong assumption is, Jonathan, that you see that from an account-based marketing approach as well, that companies of all different sizes and all different types of industries leverage account-based marketing, and the ones that don't, a main driver of that is simply they don't know how to get started. Is that a fair correlation?
That's absolutely fair. I think if you go back 5, even 10 years ago, a lot of companies would just buy a list, use an email tool, and send emails out to cold prospects, similar to the ones we still get today. And, there's a few of them that would make it through into the pipeline, eventually create conversations. And with the shift of, really the consumers are the ones that own the experience, right? And they're the ones that are demanding a more personalized experience. And a lot of companies are having a hard time adjusting to that, right? And so, the ABM strategy is really centered around the fact that, you're gonna target a group of accounts and have really high conversion rates. And ultimately, like for example, us, when we get on a conversation with somebody, 50% of the businesses that look at our software and demo purchase. But a lot of that's not just created on the sales side, which we do have great salespeople, but a lot of it's created on the marketing side by having conversations with the right audience and using more of a harpoon strategy versus a wide net strategy. And I think for our clients, there's a lot of services involved that we provide, try to get them up and running. And what we find is when they get up and running and they kind of see the strategy and see best practices, they're having a ton of success. Sometimes it's that first step that's always tough, but there's no question that with all the tools and with all the data out there, there's more resources than ever to drive success with ABM.
Perfect. The next question is from Sam and for Jonathan, and he asks, isn't ABM for larger companies? If my business is smaller, can ABM still work for my business?
Well, I hear that question all the time. We work with, Hatchbuck has clients in over 100 different industries, but also we have them from, 2, 3, 4, 5 people all the way up to, large organizations. So it varies. And traditionally, ABM has been for larger enterprise B2B firms. You remember, ABM is target account planning, right? Which has been around for 100 years, but it's back in vogue with the way that consumers have changed the dialogue. And usually larger companies are quicker to adapt, to new trends and changes in the marketplace. So we've seen, obviously, ABM catch fire with larger organizations. But what I would say is with the growing change in consumer behavior towards personalization, and you infuse the fact that you have now simple yet powerful CRM, marketing tools, data tools, I've seen a ton of SMB companies adopt ABM, and then we're starting to see great results. We're starting to see them drive sales, 25, 30% growth. And a lot of it's just from a more personalized strategy and leveraging that account-based methodology.
And I would also, just to pile onto that, Jonathan, I would also contend that there is a very strong correlation. So if you think about a smaller company that's looking to really scale and grow their customer base and grow revenue at a rapid pace, there's a very large correlation to smaller companies that leverage both identity resolution and account-based marketing and adopt that very early on to the to companies that are being successful in scaling their customer base and growing revenue. If you wait till you get to a size and scale to where suddenly growth slows down and now you say, boy, the traditional casting a wide net and doing business development efforts the old-fashioned way with just activity only. If you wait in order to adopt an account-based marketing strategy until that point, it's going to be more challenging and more complex to get it started.
Yeah, and Mike, I would say a couple of things to piggyback on that. Number one, I've been around for a long time doing this, over 2 decades of driving inbound marketing and marketing and sales leadership. And so I've seen a lot of different strategies and tools and, fads come and go. But one thing that I know for sure is that, with Hatchbuck, when we built Hatchbuck, and again, this isn't a plug for Hatchbuck because there's other solutions out there, we built the CRM and the marketing tools in one. And the big reason we did that is because we wanted somebody to have a view of the customer or a view of the prospect, right? So 360-degree view, pulling all the data we possibly can. We do leverage FullContact and that data record. When I'm on somebody's record, I want to know everything about them so I can establish a great conversation with them. And that's number one. Number two, I would say this, a lot of companies may want to wait to adopt an ABM strategy, but I would say, can you scale and grow effectively without an ABM strategy? That's the bigger question, right? We're assuming that they grow and they scale and then they adopt it, but realistically, with the way that behaviors of consumers have changed and everybody wanting, personalization at every stage, every channel of your marketing strategy, I would say jump in sooner than later. Whether you use FullContact or Hatchbuck, if you go to our resource center, we're not just about pushing Hatchbuck. We're about helping businesses to understand, technology and strategy out there. I would say jump on, learn as much as you can. We have a ton of resources that you'll get at the end of the webinar, which I know Ali will touch on. But I would say jump in. And if you're just getting started, it's okay. It's not too late. And there's a lot of great information out there from us, from FullContact, and even other companies that I think can help educate you and get your strategy locked in.
Cool. Mike, this question is for you. It's what data is FullContact capable of enriching beyond social media profiles?
Sure, that's a great question. So it's demographic information. It's all of the psychographic and firmographic data that we can return. It's also very, very rich affinity type data that supports all that. It's postal address. It's being able to take digital identifiers to get all that information, such as cookie IDs and device IDs. So it's really a pretty broad wealth of data that we can return today based on our identity graph about an individual.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to do one last question, and Jonathan, I'll throw this one to you, but Mike, also feel free to chime in. What does a good ABM tech stack look like?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say not just because obviously, Hatchbuck's a CRM, but I mean, just been doing this a long time, and I would say at the core, I don't know how you can have effective marketing strategy, much less an ABM strategy, without a great CRM. And so I think that's key. And obviously a tool like Hatchbuck can help you give insights in your key accounts. But I think when you pair the CRM, so you have the center of your stack as your CRM, I think integrating tools, for example, like FullContact, so you can enrich data and get details on social profiles, just to give you those data points at your fingertips. You can have better conversations are key. The other thing I would say is, when you add in tools like marketing automation, which happens to be built into one platform with us, but there's other companies, for example, if you're using Salesforce, you may use another automation tool. That automation tool is really important in streamlining communication, right? Because what we found, not even here, Hatchbuck, we started in 2012. We used other tools before that. And so we've been around using inbound marketing tools and automation tools for, a couple of decades. And the reality is that, that automation tool can do a lot of the heavy lifting. We used to see marketing tools handle like maybe a quarter of the first process of the buyer's journey. Now it's 50 to 75%. So for me, I would make sure using automation to engage those prospects and then engage sales when it's right, instead of having them talk unqualified leads. With your ABM strategy, it's really having them engage when people are hot and ready to talk to you. So I think that's definitely key. And then I would say, maybe use tools like Zapier is great from a middleware perspective, because they can hook into just about every tool you might possibly be using. And I think that if you haven't checked them out, you can go to Zapier.com and kind of check them out. But the reality is, when you build your marketing stack, I would start the CRM at the middle with enriched data, and then I would add the marketing tools, and then add any other tools that you currently use, your sales and marketing team uses, to build that stack. Because realistically, the tools are out there for you to have success with ABM and allow you to do a lot less with more and drive personalization at scale.
And I will say as well, Jonathan, two things. One, I was going to mention Zapier is a company to be able to leverage as well. The other piece, I can tell you, just as a consumer or end user of a lot of the technology stack that now becomes more and more blended across marketing and sales, I'm becoming far more bullish today in leveraging, and the importance of leveraging a platform like Hatchbuck, where the CRM and the marketing automation is all within the same platform. I think it solves a whole bunch of problems out of the gates. So the more you can, not only the automation pieces that Jonathan mentioned, but the more you can, it's almost like more with less, right? So the more you can have integrated systems that have the capabilities that span across from top to bottom, I think it just simplifies and makes things easier for the end users, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree.
All right, well, that is all we have time for today. We appreciate you guys all tuning in, and definitely keep an eye on your inbox for the recording and for some other resources from both Hatchbuck and FullContact. Mike and Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. This has been very insightful.
Thank you, Allie.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, and thanks for having me today.
Have a good day, Mike, and see you guys all next time.